Okay, so let's talk about that feeling, that tightness maybe, or just being completely overwhelmed. University, work, life in general, it throws a lot at you, doesn't it?
It really does. And that feeling, that pressure, that's basically what we're diving into today. Stress, it's universal.
Absolutely. And we've got some source material here that tries to really lay it out for us, what it is, how it hits us, what sets it off.
And crucially, how we can maybe navigate it a bit better. This material gives us a pretty structured look at the whole thing.
Right. So our mission really for this deep dive is to unpack all that, pull out the key ideas from the source, explore them a bit, so you listening walk away with a clearer understanding.
And hopefully some practical takeaways, too. Consider it a guided tour through this particular perspective on stress.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then. How does this source actually define stress, especially in, say, a university context?
Well, it defines academic stress pretty straightforwardly. It's the normal reaction we have to all those demands, things like tests, exams, deadlines, presentations.
Usual suspects.
Exactly, those requirements placed on us. But here's the interesting bit the source points out right away.
What's that?
This initial reaction, it's not necessarily bad. In fact, it argues stress initially serves a purpose. It activates us, mobilizes us.
Ah, so it's like an energy boost.
Yeah,
Gets you ready to deal with whatever's coming.
precisely. It's the body's way of saying, okay, time to focus, time to act. It helps us respond effectively, helps us hit those goals. That's the first stage.
Right, like flipping a switch to on. You need that sometimes to get things done. I feel that before a big deadline,
Yeah.
that initial surge.
That's the activation phase kicking in. But, and this is a big but in the source, there's a critical warning.
Okay.
While that activation is helpful, if you stay under those high demands for too long, without breaks, without recovery, that's when it starts to turn negative, really negative.
Okay, so the problem isn't the stress itself, but staying in that stress state continuously.
Exactly. It's about duration and intensity without recovery. And the source actually outlines phases to show how this unfolds. It's not just one thing, it's a process.
Right, of a progression. What are these phases?
So you start with that activation we talked about, body and mind gearing up. If the demand doesn't let up, you move into what the source calls the resistance phase.
Resistance phase. Okay, what's going on there? You're
I'll-
just fighting it?
Kind of. Your system is actively working hard to cope, to resist the ongoing strain. You might still be functioning, pushing through tasks.
But it's costing you something.
It's costing you energy, significant energy. Your body's basically running at a higher capacity to keep up. Think of it like treading water vigorously. You can do it, but
Yeah.
not forever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the source really emphasizes this. To stop your performance from eventually tanking, you have to manage how long you stay in this resistance phase. You need to regulate it.
So you can sprint, but you can't keep sprinting indefinitely without crashing.
That's a perfect analogy, because if you don't regulate it, if you just keep pushing without rest, without letting your system recover,
Then what?
then you hit the next phase. Exhaustion. Your physical and mental resources just get depleted, used up, and your performance, it starts to noticeably drop.
Exhaustion.
Yeah,
It sounds final, like the system's just waving a white flag.
it's definitely a state of serious depletion. You've basically burned through your reserves. Maintaining that previous level of effort becomes incredibly hard, maybe impossible.
Okay, that sounds bad enough. Is there anything after exhaustion?
Unfortunately, yes, according to this source. If even in that exhausted state, you still don't stop, you don't rest, you don't recover, you can enter the phase of chronicity.
Chronicity. What does that mean in terms of stress?
It means the problems become chronic, persistent. Those symptoms of exhaustion, the fatigue, the brain fog, the aches, the mood issues, they stop being temporary warning signs. They become your baseline.
Wow, so it becomes embedded in your system.
That's what the source implies, yes. The system is so overloaded for so long, it struggles to get back to normal. The damage, in a sense, becomes more ingrained. It's not just a bad week, it's a long-term state.
So understanding this progression, activation, resistance, exhaustion, chronicity, it's really important. It shows managing stress isn't just about feeling better now. It's about preventing that slide into the later, more damaging stages.
Absolutely. It paints a clear picture of what happens when stress goes unchecked over time. It's a biological and psychological process with real consequences.
Okay, that framework of phases is really helpful, but let's back up a bit. What actually causes this whole process to start? What are the triggers? The source talks about different kinds of demands, right?
Yes, it breaks them down into two main types. First, there are external demands.
Right, the obvious one, stuff from the outside world.
Exactly. Pressures from your environment, deadlines, difficult tasks, changes at work or school, relationship issues, things happening to you that require a response.
Things the world throws at you, basically.
Yeah, precisely. And we usually think of these first when we talk about stress. But the source highlights another category, one that's maybe less obvious but super powerful. Internal demands.
Internal demands. Okay, this sounds interesting. This is the pressure we put on ourselves.
That's exactly it. And it really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much stress is actually self-generated? The source lists some key examples.
Like what?
Well, one is being very self-demanding, that inner voice that says everything has to be perfect, you have to do more, achieve more, never make a mistake, setting that impossibly high internal bar.
Yeah, I know that voice. And it mentions having high expectations of achievement, too. Is that different?
It's related, but slightly different. It's not just the external task, but your own internal standard for how you achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
You might meet the official requirement, but if it doesn't meet your personal, maybe sky-high expectation, you still feel stressed.
Right. You did the job, but you beat yourself up because it wasn't perfect in your eyes.
Exactly. Another big one listed is the need to maintain control.
Ah, the control thing.
Yes. Feeling like you must be in charge of everything, situations, outcomes, even other people sometimes. When things are uncertain or genuinely outside your influence, this internal need for control generates huge amounts of stress and anxiety.
That feeling of things slipping out of your grasp.
Precisely. And then there's one that sounds a bit strange at first, needing to make an effort on things.
Wait, isn't effort good? How is that a stressor?
Effort itself isn't the problem, of course. But the source points to the internal demand to exert maximum or excessive effort, maybe on things that don't warrant it, or feeling compelled to operate at 110% all the time. It's not just doing the work, it's the internal pressure behind the work, that constant self-pushing.
Okay, I see. So it's not just the external demand, but my internal need for it to be perfect, to control every detail, and to pour every last drop of energy into it, those internal demands that really crank up the stress level.
You've got it. We often add this whole extra layer of pressure ourselves. So the source is saying, look, understanding your own internal landscape, your tendencies, is just as critical as knowing the external deadlines.
That's a really powerful point. It then goes into specific examples of stressors, right? Both academic and, well, just life stuff.
Yes, it gets quite specific. Under academic stressors, it lists the things you'd expect. Handing in work, taking tests, especially under time pressure.
Limited time. Always a killer.
Definitely. Also, doing group work is mentioned. That brings in a whole mix of social dynamics, different work styles, relying on others.
Oh yeah, group projects can be massively stressful.
They really can. And things like presenting in front of the class, defending a dissertation, that performance anxiety element.
Yep.
And a big one, just not understanding the material being taught in class, feeling lost, falling behind, the pressure of trying to catch up. That's a huge academic stressor for many.
Very relatable. Yeah. But then, importantly, it doesn't just stop at academic stuff. It includes a list of non-academic stressors.
Yeah.
It's based on that Holmes and Ross scale, right? About major life events.
Yes, an adapted list. And this is so important because it reminds us that stress isn't compartmentalized. What happens in your life outside of studies or work deeply affects your overall state. This list covers a huge range.
Okay, let's touch on some of them. What kind of things are on this list?
Well, major events like the death of a friend, huge emotional toll. Marriage, joyful, yes, but a massive life change. Separation or divorce, incredibly demanding emotionally and practically.
Starting or even ending an internship is on there too. Even those transitions count.
Yes, because any significant transition requires adaptation, which is inherently demanding. Pregnancy is listed major physical and emotional changes. A change in the health of a family member brings worry, maybe caregiving roles.
Losing a job dismissal or termination, that's a huge one. Financial stress, loss of identity.
Absolutely. Legal issues are on the list. Dealing with the legal system is inherently stressful. Changes in living conditions, moving house, new roommates, different environment.
Adding a new family member.
Yeah.
Personal injury or illness. Dealing with addiction or alcoholism, either your own or someone close to you. These are heavy hitters.
Immensely stressful life challenges, definitely. The list also includes changing residence again, just emphasizing that moving is tough.
Yeah.
Couple reconciliation, even getting back together, isn't stress-free. It involves work.
And then some things that seem smaller, like changing eating habits, changing sleeping habits.
Yes, disrupting those basic biological rhythms puts a strain on your system. The body likes routine. Changing social activities is even mentioned.
And vacation. Vacation is listed as a potential stressor.
It is. And that's maybe the most revealing one on the list. It really drives home the point that stress isn't just about negative events.
How can vacation be stressful?
Think about it. Planning it, the cost, travel hassles, being out of your routine, maybe pressure to have the perfect time, dealing with family dynamics on the trip. Any significant change or demand for adaptation can trigger the stress response, even if it's something you look forward to.
That really reframes things. So it's about the demand for adjustment, not just whether the event is good or bad.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
And the source makes another crucial point. The real challenge often kicks in when you're facing multiple demands at once. Academic pressures piled on top of life event stress, plus maybe those internal demands we talked about.
It's the cumulative effect.
Exactly. The source says having many demands simultaneously can sharpen the stress response, make it more intense, and slow down our performance. You're juggling too much, and your ability to cope with any single thing diminishes. They interact and amplify each other.
Okay, so we've got the phases, we've got the triggers, external, internal, academic, life events. The next piece, according to the source, is recognizing how stress actually shows up, how it manifests in us personally.
Yes, and this is critical because it's different for everyone. My stress signs might not be yours. The source says identifying your personal reactions in your body, your mind, your behavior is the absolute first step towards doing something about it. You need to know your warning signs.
And it organizes these signs into 3 areas: physical, psychological, emotional, and behavioral.
That's right. It provides a really helpful framework. Let's look at the physical manifestations first, how stress shows up in the body.
What are some examples?
Things like tachycardia, that sudden racing heartbeat or palpitations, changes in appetite, eating way more or way less than usual, getting sick more often, like frequent colds, suggesting your immune system is taking a hit.
Trouble sleeping is a big one, right?
Yeah,
Insomnia or nightmares.
definitely. Sleep disruption is classic. Also physical pain like back pain or just feeling constantly tired and fatigued, even if you think you're resting.
Headaches or migraines.
Yes, very common stress symptoms. Stomach issues too, pain, irritable bowel type symptoms. Stress really messes with your gut.
And that teeth grinding thing. Bruxism.
Clenching your jaw, often at night, leads to jaw pain, headaches, and sometimes, strangely, feeling really drowsy or needing more sleep. But it's often not restful sleep. It's the body crying out for recovery.
It really shows how mental stress translates into physical symptoms. It's not just in your head at all.
Not at all. The mind-body connection is incredibly strong. Then there are the psychological and emotional manifestations. How stress affects our thinking and feelings.
Like finding it hard to focus.
Exactly. Difficulty concentrating is a major one. Difficulty thinking clearly, that feeling of your mind just going blank when you need it most. Memory problems too, being more forgetful than usual.
Which obviously makes things like studying or complex work even harder.
Absolutely. It directly impacts cognitive performance. Emotionally, the source lists things like being frequently irritable, having a shorter fuse, a constant fear of not being able to cope or meet obligations.
Losing motivation. Like for studying or things you usually enjoy.
Yes, low motivation, feeling apathetic about things, and more intense feelings too, like frequent anguish or crying spells, constant anxiety, feeling restless, like you can't sit still.
Or the opposite, maybe. Sadness or apathy.
Yes, feeling down, detached, lacking emotion. It can swing both ways, agitated or withdrawn. Recognizing these shifts in your thoughts and mood is key to understanding the internal impact of stress.
And the third category, behavioral manifestations. These are the changes in what we actually do, things others might notice.
Exactly. Observable changes in behavior. The source lists things like arguing more with people, the stress spilling over into relationships, using sleeping pills, maybe without a prescription, just trying to force sleep.
There was a specific one about studying, difficulty sitting down to study, turning over.
Yes, that captures it well, doesn't it? That feeling of resistance, procrastination, finding it incredibly hard to start the task that's causing the stress, it's avoidance behavior.
Makes sense. What else?
Using drugs to stay awake, caffeine pills, other stimulants, again, often self-medicated, trying to push through the fatigue. preferring any other activity over studying or facing the stressor.
Isolating yourself, needing to be alone more.
Yes, social withdrawal. Also, maybe stopping attending classes or avoiding responsibilities, an increase in things like coffee or smoking,
Yeah.
using substances to try and manage energy or anxiety.
And abandoning routines.
Yes, a tendency to stop doing things you normally do, exercise, hobbies, seeing friends often out of apathy or feeling overwhelmed, just letting things slide.
And the last one mentioned, frequent involvement in unhealthy places. What might that mean?
It could mean seeking out environments or activities that are ultimately detrimental, maybe as a form of escape or self-sabotage. It's quite a broad category.
Wow. So putting it all together, physical, psychological, behavioral stress really can show up in so many different ways.
Sure.
Recognizing your specific pattern seems crucial.
It really is, because once you can connect the dots, okay, this demand seems to trigger this physical feeling, this thought pattern, and this behavior in me, then you're in a much better position to act. It moves stress from this vague, scary thing to something identifiable.
Right. Which leads perfectly to the next part. What can we actually do about it? The source talks about prevention and coping strategies.
Exactly. It provides a whole list of strategies aimed at preventing stress from becoming chronic or managing the symptoms when you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe in that resistance or early exhaustion phase. They cover a lot of ground.
Some seem like general healthy living advice, but framed as stress management, like spending time on hobbies.
Yes. Making time for things you genuinely enjoy, just for fun, is presented as a key recovery tool. It takes you out of demand mode. Healthy eating at regular times is another stable blood sugar. Good nutrition support resilience.
Sleep, of course. Maintaining stable sleep cycles.
Foundational. Sleep is when your body and brain repair and consolidate. Skimping on it makes you much more vulnerable to stress.
Practicing relaxation and deep breathing. These come up a lot.
Because they work. They're direct ways to calm your nervous system, to interrupt that fight or flight response physiologically. The source lists them as active strategies.
What about planning? Planning activities and prioritizing.
That tackles the feeling of being overwhelmed. Breaking big tasks down, deciding what's most important. It gives you a sense of control and makes demands feel more manageable.
Seeking help and sharing with others, talking about it.
Hugely important. Social support is a massive buffer against stress. Bottling it up usually makes it worse.
This one's interesting. Deciding between different study techniques. How is that a stress strategy?
Well, if you feel ineffective or incompetent when studying, that's stressful. Finding techniques that actually work for you can reduce the stress associated with the task itself. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, actually it does. Feeling more capable reduces the pressure. What else? Striving to remain calm and quiet.
Kind of actively cultivating inner peace, counteracting the restlessness and anxiety. Keeping a sense of humor is mentioned too, finding perspective, not taking everything so seriously all the time.
And exercise. Practicing sports or recreational activities.
Absolutely. Physical activity is a well-known stress buster. It burns off stress hormones, improves mood, helps with sleep. It ticks a lot of boxes.
So that's a pretty broad toolkit. Lifestyle stuff, mental approaches, social connection. And then the source zooms in on one specific technique, doesn't it? Jacobson's progressive muscle relaxation.
Yes, it highlights this one in detail as a concrete method for relaxation. It attributes it to Edmund Jacobson, an American psychiatrist back in the 1990s, according to this source.
Okay, progressive muscle relaxation. What's the basic idea?
The core principle, as described, is learning to control muscle tension voluntarily. You do this by systematically tensing specific muscle groups for a few seconds, really paying attention to that feeling of tension,
And then letting it go.
and then completely releasing the tension and focusing on the feeling of relaxation that follows. The progressive part just means you work through different muscle groups in the body step by step.
Why is that helpful for stress? Just tensing and relaxing muscles.
The source explains that it helps you become really aware of the connection between physical tension in your muscles and your mental state of tension or stress. We often hold stress physically without even realizing it in our shoulders, jaw, neck.
Right, that unconscious clenching.
Exactly. By deliberately tensing and then releasing, you learn to recognize what tension feels like, and more importantly, what relaxation feels like in contrast. Practicing letting go of the physical tension helps train your mind and body to let go of the mental stress too.
So you're using the body to calm the mind, essentially. Building that awareness and control. The source gives a pretty detailed walkthrough, doesn't it? Which muscles to work on.
It does. It's quite specific. It suggests starting with the legs. You do things like extend your feet, maybe lift your legs slightly, press them down, point your toes, tense your buttocks. Hold each tension, then release fully.
Noticing the difference between tense and relaxed each time.
That's the key.
Okay.
Then moving up to the trunk, tensing your abdominal muscles, maybe pulling them in tight, and then arching your back slightly while breathing in, feeling the tension there, then releasing.
Shoulders next. Always a tight spot for me.
Very common. The instruction is to lift your shoulders up towards your ears, then pull them back, squeezing the shoulder blades. Hold that squeeze, then let them drop completely. Feel the release.
Okay. Then arms.
Stretching them out, tensing the biceps and triceps, making tight fists, feeling that tension all the way down, then letting it all go, letting the hands relax, arms feel heavy.
Moving up again to the neck. Gently, I assume.
Yes, gently. Bringing the head back slightly, then pressing the chin towards the chest, maybe tilting side to side. Tensing those neck muscles carefully, then releasing, letting the head find a comfortable, neutral position.
And finally, the face. Lots of small muscles there.
Right, and we hold a lot of tension there. The source breaks it down. Muscles of speech, like making a big smile, then pursing lips like a kiss, opening the mouth wide, then clenching the jaw, sticking the tongue out, then pressing it against the roof of the mouth, then the bottom.
Wow, very specific movements.
It really targets those areas. Then wrinkling the nose upwards. And for the eyes, closing them tightly, pressing the eyelids, then raising the eyebrows high, tensing the forehead, maybe frowning hard, then releasing all of that facial tension.
It sounds like a full body scan, but an active one. Tensing and releasing, becoming super aware of where you hold tension, and practicing letting it go.
That's precisely the idea presented. It's offered as one very concrete, step-by-step technique you can learn and use regularly, putting the general advice about relaxation into practice. It directly addresses the physical component of the stress response.
Okay, so bringing this all together then, this deep dive, using this source material, has given us a pretty comprehensive map of stress, hasn't it?
I think so, yeah. We've seen it's not just some vague bad feeling. It's a response, initially may be helpful, but one that progresses through phases: activation, resistance, exhaustion, potentially chronicity if it's not managed.
And we learned that triggers aren't just the obvious external stuff, but also those sneaky internal demands. Perfectionism, need for control.
Which can be incredibly powerful drivers of our stress levels. And we've seen how stress manifests everywhere, physically, psychologically, behaviorally, with lots of specific signs to look out for.
And the crucial part, knowing the triggers and recognizing the signs empowers us. It allows us to actually use the strategies the source outlines: lifestyle changes, hobbies, social support, specific techniques like that muscle relaxation.
Exactly. The source essentially provides a framework. Understand the cause, recognize the effects, apply the strategies. It moves from understanding the problem to actionable solutions.
It really emphasizes that while dealing with demands is part of life, especially in tough environments, feeling constantly drained or suffering long-term negative impacts isn't inevitable. There are things you can do.
You gain agency. By understanding the process described here and having these tools, whether it's adjusting your sleep schedule or practicing muscle relaxation, you can actively manage your response.
So the big takeaway seems to be, stress is complex, it comes from outside and inside, it affects your whole being, and it can become chronic. But knowledge is power here. Understanding how it works and how it shows up in you lets you use targeted strategies to fight back and find more balance.
Well put. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, drawing just from this material. Really consider the weight of those internal demands. We focus so much on external pressures, deadlines, difficult people. But how much stress are you generating yourself through that need for perfection, that need for control, that relentless self-pushing?
That's a challenging question.
It is. Recognizing and maybe gently adjusting that internal landscape could be just as important, maybe even more so, than trying to change the external world. So maybe reflect on that. What stands out most to you about how stress shows up in your life? And which of these coping strategies feels like it might be the most helpful place for you to start right now?